Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
This edition, we're going to be talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition, not 2nd Edition 2.0, or what some people may even call Pathfinder 3.
Okay.
Because it is a new edition and it's changed some of the rules.
Well, let's give everybody a little bit of a background how we got involved in Pathfinder.
Yeah.
We'll kind of go with the timeline.
We were a 3.5 group for a long time.
Yeah.
And when Wizards of the Coast came out with 4th edition, Paizo, who is a publisher for Wizards of the Coast, came out with their 1st edition. They actually started releasing stuff that was 3.5 compatible, and then they took the license, the OGL license, and started creating Pathfinder 1st edition. And it was basically Dungeons & Dragons 3.75. That's how we basically call it, because it was very similar. In fact, you could actually take some of the 3.5 stuff and integrate it into Pathfinder 1st edition.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been playing Pathfinder 1st edition up until about 2 months ago or so.
Yeah.
We started playing 2nd edition. And that's because I was finished with my campaigns and I had run some other adventures. And one of our other players wanted to run a campaign. And he wanted to run a 2.0, Pathfinder 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll try this out and play it. Now, this is Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Yes.
This is Pathfinder 2nd Edition 2.0, or you could basically even call it Pathfinder 3.
I think for simplicity's sake, we're going to refer to this as Pathfinder 3.
Yes.
Just because we have, OG Pathfinder, then we have the next version,
2.0,
and then the next one will be 3.0.
Yeah.
So we're going to call this 3rd edition, just we're going to keep it straight. It's very easy to get it mixed up when you start talking about alpha editions, beta editions, different numerical editions.
Yeah.
But just keep in mind that when they come out with a whole new system, it's essentially another type of edition.
Right. Now, some people, for the confusion's sake, Pathfinder 2nd Edition 1.0, Pathfinder 2nd Edition 2.0.
Yeah. I mean, however you want to look at it.
Right.
So, but keep in mind we're playing this one. See, the thing that really confuses people. Okay, see, it says right there 2nd edition. Okay.
Right.
Now it says right here
2nd Edition.
2nd edition. So if people looked at that, they'd be like, well, which one's 2nd edition? Because this looks like a player core rule book, and this looks like a core rule book. But the thing is this one differs from this original 2nd edition one.
Right.
So we're not going to really talk about this one so much because we're not playing in this edition right here, but we're playing in the 2nd edition one, the 2.0,
right.
Which is what we're going to talk
about. There
about.
are things in this edition that have been totally stripped out of this edition. So this book does not have your champion, which is basically like your paladin.
Yeah. And
you had to buy a whole other book to get the barbarian, to get the champion, to get a bunch of other things.
Well, that's something we can talk about though. It's like how do you break up your books to include everything that everybody likes?
Right. So probably about 2 months ago, a month and a half or so ago, we started playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And it was supposed to be a one-shot. It kind of was a two-shot because we couldn't finish up the game in one session. And it was totally new to every one of us, including really the Dungeon Master. I mean, he's played it. He had played it, and I think he's even ran a little bit for his son and some of his son's friends. And he really likes the system from what he's played. He's gone to Pathfinder Society games, and I think he's played with some other people, but he really liked the game. And there are things that I read in 2.0 that I really liked. But there are things that I don't like.
Yeah.
And after playing, I found things that I really don't like. And to kind of give you an example, in Pathfinder First Edition, we use a program called Hero Lab.
Yeah.
And Hero Lab, you can either use it directly on your computer, your laptop, or you can use the online version, which then you can use it on a tablet. As long as you've got an online connection, you can use it.
Yeah.
And it makes creating a character a breeze. I can create a character in Pathfinder First Edition from start to finish in about 15 minutes. I can really throw them together.
Yeah.
And as a dungeon master, you're just creating characters and monsters and whatever. You can just throw them in and create it. When it came to doing Pathfinder Second Edition, our dungeon master wanted us to make a 6th level character. And we are all very experienced players. I've been playing, once again, since 1979. So I have a ton of experience, and I've heard people say, you shouldn't do that. BS is my reply to that. Anybody who's experienced could jump right in.
Exactly.
The complexity became in trying to create the character and trying to make it where it fell exactly within the specs of the rule of the game. Hero Lab makes you do that. It flags you when something is not right or something is missing, which makes creating a character a lot easier. It took me about a week. Now, that wasn't non-stop. That was fiddling 30 minutes here, an hour there, or whatever, to try and get it. And I made a lot of mistakes that I couldn't find because Hero Lab was flagging me saying, nope, you can't do this. And I'm like, what? It's not telling me exactly what's wrong.
Yeah.
And I had to trash that character and start all over again.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I was trying to create a character. I got so far down the rabbit hole that I had so many red flags coming up, and I couldn't figure out how to correct them.
How to validate them.
And I eventually just scrapped the first character, and then I went my second character. I started very slowly.
And I had already figured it out by this point, so I was there to help Tom.
And, the thing is, I will admit, okay, it's very difficult for me to create a character. I have to use Hero Lab. I just can't retain the amount of information and stuff in these books. They're just too much in them for me to
dual, and our jobs take so much, and
it's just too much for me to digest.
30 years ago, it was easy.
Yeah, and I am a player who is enthusiastic about playing the game. I truly am, but it is difficult to keep every sort of rule, every sort of line, every sort of channel correct with each other one. You know. And the thicker the books get, the harder it gets. So that's why Hero Lab is a real resource. So I wanted to create a gnome sorcerer, or rather a gnome wizard. I think I was thinking about gnome magic users in general.
Yeah, gnome wizard.
Yeah, and so there's these schools that they send you down, and these channels that they don't interact with each other. And these are schools of magic. People keep asking me, well, can't you throw like a fireball? Can't you throw this? I'm like, well, according to this, you can't. Once you go down these different areas in these different schools, you're cut off from other types of magic areas that you can't, destructive magic. Your stuff is more sorcerous, it's more conjuration, it's illusionary. It's more illusionary, things like that, and you're pretty much stuck down those channels. So what Pathfinder 2.0 did was basically sort of eliminate the magic generalist that everybody always thought wizards were. That, wizards have a whole big pile of 15, 20 spells.
You've always had the different schools from at least, and I could be wrong, 3.5, 3.0, 3.5, that had the different schools, whether you're an evoker or a transmutator or a necromancer or an illusionist, and that's where you kind of went your schools. But you also had your generalists, which weren't limited.
Right.
You didn't get some of the powers or some of the extra spells.
Yeah.
But you could pretty much use anything.
Right, and the thing is when I first started creating through this system, I really bollocksed it up bad. And Delaney will attest to that I kept asking her over and over again, how do I get this flag off here? How do I figure out how do I do this? And you end up with this character that's got like 10 flags next to it. And like, this character's wrong. I mean, I can't play this character. So after trashing the first one, we very carefully went through the second one, and I began to realize that there really is a method to the madness. You just have to pay attention to what's going on. And there really is this method where you go, this second edition of Pathfinder likes to put your characters down different channels and areas.
It's so, there is so much diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Pathfinder second edition that character creation is even bigger than what it was in first edition.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just mind blowing
Way more
what you
complex.
can create
Way more
as
complex.
a character in this than what you could in
family bloodlines, backgrounds, languages, areas you're
the
from,
country you're from. Yeah,
the society you're from,
your
the clan,
feats,
your
your
feats.
background feats, your regular class feats, your
The way they're tabulated, the way the feats are tabulated are really, and the way the skills are tabulated are really different. They have these core skills and core feats that basically you get, and then if you increase them, they get better and better, kind of almost exponentially.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they're easier to get, but your other skills are harder to get. Yeah, they're harder to maintain. So I seem like I ended up with less skills. Maybe more feats, but less skills with my character.
Well, with some of the skills, you have, if it's one of your class skills, it becomes a trained.
A trained.
So there's these 5 dots next to the number, and as you go up in level, you become not just trained. You can put a check in it to become an expert.
Yeah.
And to become advanced and whatever, and then that gives you bonuses.
Right.
To your ability.
I mean, you still have the same old dice checks, okay? But the dice checks are different. Say your dice check for fumble and crit. They're different now.
Right. So in regular Pathfinder first edition, if you rolled a nat 20 in combat, it was a possible critical.
Mm-hmm.
All you had to do is roll again, and as long as you hit the number, you crit. Now, let's say you needed a nat 20 anyway to hit the creature. If you rolled 2 20s, then it was a crit. But if you say you rolled an 18 on your second roll, you couldn't confirm it.
Right.
But let's say it's a creature that's only got a 17 armor class, and you roll a nat 20, and that's without all your bonuses added in. That's a possible crit. And then when you roll again, let's say you roll a 15 and you've got a +2 to your hit, that's a crit because you confirmed the hit.
Exactly.
So critting is different in first edition than it is in second edition. Now, we're going to get into that with the likes and the dislikes. And that's part of the likes that I have with Pathfinder second edition. If you roll a to hit, and as long as you score 10 over what you need, it is an automatic critical. If you roll 10 under what you needed to hit, it's an automatic fumble. So if you needed a 15 to hit something, if you got 25 on your die roll, well, that's a critical.
Mm-hmm.
If you rolled a 24, that's just a regular hit. So 15 to 24, it's just a regular hit, 25 plus. If you rolled a 15 to 24, that was just a regular hit, while a 25 and over was a critical.
Right, gotcha.
If you rolled a 14 to, 9? No. A 5, excuse me. 6, actually. So 10 less, it was just a miss, and if you rolled less than that, so say a 5 to a 1 or a 5, then you fumbled.
That's a fumble. So it isn't just a 1 that you can fumble on.
Math can be hard. You lose concentration on it.
It isn't just a 1 that you can fumble on. You can fumble on like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending.
Right.
So expanding the ranges of crits, but also expanded the ranges of fumbles. Now I think that's the equity part of it. It doesn't make it that easy to you to just crit everybody in sight.
Deadlier.
It can make it deadlier, not only for the person you're playing, for your character, but it can also make it deadlier for your opponent.
Right. Criticals in first edition, if you rolled a skill check, it didn't matter. As long as you succeeded, it was a success.
Yeah.
in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, once again, if it's 10 over, it's a critical success. If it's 10 under, it's a critical failure. And there are things that can happen.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, you are trying to intimidate somebody. And let's say you needed that 15, once again, to intimidate them. Which intimidating in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is something that you want to do, because then it makes it harder for them to hit your teammates and easier for your teammates to hit them.
Yeah.
And if you critical success, if you succeed, it's for 1 round. If you critical succeed, it's for 2 rounds. So for 2 rounds, you put an intimidation on that enemy that you're fighting, and now your party's got a bonus.
Right.
So that means extra things you can do on your action, which we'll get into. But if you critical fail, then now it goes against you.
Yeah. So I can see where people could be a little nonplussed by this, where they'd be a little bit like, wait, I don't want to play that game because if I fail, it could really mess me up. It's like, well, there's the equity part of it again.
Yeah.
They don't want to balance something in favor of doing your opponent's damage. They want to make it, a kind of a situation where you could actually do some damage to yourself if you don't roll right.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting way to look at it, that you have these sort of checks and levels, that you have levels of success.
I find that I like the critical success and critical failure a lot better. I think it just adds another dimension to the game. Because the last game, I was critting left and right.
You were. I'm a little on the fence with it yet. I haven't really suffered that badly of a bunch of critical fails. But I'm sure when my character breaks their bows and trips over their arrows and stabs themselves in the eye and that kind of stuff,
right.
I'll start, really beginning to look into the critical fail type of thing as something, right, whether I like it or I don't like it.
And it can work with you, it can work against you.
Exactly. And the interesting thing about it is, I think the writers of the book decided they were going to try to make the books a little more realistic. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's the best word I can figure right now. A little more realistic. It's kind of like when you fall big.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Or when you succeed, you really succeed. So they've got levels of success and levels of failure to kind of mirror the way our real world works.
Yeah. Now another thing that they went to is the 3-action economy. You don't have this action, reaction, free action, bonus action, blah 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 action, mega action, whatever action that both Pathfinder First Edition and 5e has.
Yeah.
That can get real confusing.
It was always confusing for me. I'm going to interrupt for a second because in our Pathfinder 1 game, I could never figure out what it meant to hold your action. I could never, because I would say, okay, I'm going to hold my action. But then my action would get taken up and I would be like, oh, you can't act. Well, I'm holding my action. No, you can't act. It's too late. I could never figure out how that worked. Yeah. And so if you can find a way to simplify that with the 3-action economy, which is the way I actually think it's pretty darn good, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. So the 3-action economy is you can attack in all three times of your action.
Yeah.
The problem is the more you attack, the harder it is for you to start hitting.
Mm-hmm.
And the greater chance it is of you fumbling
right.
and going against you.
Right. And that is one aspect of it, is that you could have a greater chance of fumbling.
Right.
Sure, you can attack a bunch of times, but you could also do damage to yourself.
Right. So you can do a move, you can do an attack, and then on your 3rd action, maybe you want to raise your shield if you've got a shield.
Yeah.
Now, in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, your shield does not become an automatic blocking tool. You have to say that you're blocking with your shield. Because if you don't block with your shield, you don't get the bonus to the armor class. On the downside of if you block with a shield, well, the positive, is it kind of takes in the whole, if you remember Vikings, the battle between Ragnar and the first king.
The first Jarl, yeah.
The first Jarl.
Yeah.
They get into this battle of 3 shields, breaking 3 shields.
Yep.
And when you raise your shield, it stops damage. It's got a hardness that it stops. So let's say it's got a hardness of 5, and the creature does 5 or 10 points of damage to you, it stops 5 points of that and 5 of it goes through.
Mm-hmm.
And your shield is now taking 5 points of damage to it.
But it can't do that indefinitely.
No.
That's the thing. It takes damage too.
And it will break.
And it will break.
Once it breaks, it's
you
gone.
got a broken shield. That's all you got.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting way to look at shields. And it's, like I say, it's a little more realistic. They're trying to add a little more of a real world aspect to it. You know.
And
I think
really like
weapons are like that too, right?
I think you can do it in weapons too.
Like if you strike someone's weapon.
Yeah.
We'll have to look into that, but I think that might be a thing too.
You can use it if you've got the feats and skills to use it for blocking.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And then it can stop damage. But I think those are really cool aspects. You know, the 3-action economy is just really cool. It makes things easier to do. If you have a spell that takes 1 action, well, then you still got 2 free actions to do something. Maybe even cast another spell.
Yeah.
Or some spells will say if you use... so an upcoming game is I've got a sorceress that I'm going to play. And one of her abilities is if she takes a full 3-round action and then spends the next 3 full round action, she can really emphasize that spell.
Okay.
It really makes her spell a lot more potent and damaging.
Instead
of just targeting one person, it actually is a burst.
You can maximize your spells. Yeah. And the 3-round action when it comes to spells is really cool because a lot of spells are 2 rounds, but yet you've got 1 more extra round. So you could throw a 2-round spell out and then throw a 1-round out, a cantrip or something like that.
Yeah.
So you could throw 2 spells. I thought that was really an interesting way to do that kind of spell work because it almost makes it seem as if the game process is allowing your wizard to be more adept at throwing spells.
Yeah. Instead of just being this artillerist that just stands back, I think it makes spellcasting a little bit more versatile.
Well, once I got used to it, I realized it did.
Yeah.
At first, I was going at it from the 3.0, or rather the 1.0, and I was like, where are all my spells at?
Yeah.
Because I'd played a cleric, I'd played sorcerer, I don't think I ever played a wizard, but I played an illusionist before in first edition, and I was used to the way the spells worked. However, the spells are different in here.
Yeah.
We're not quite certain, kind of on the fence, whether or not it's like good or bad. I think if we play it a little longer, we'll probably get more of an idea.
I think some of the spells have been increased in potency, but some of them have been lessened in potency.
Yeah.
One of the cool things is like your cleric. Now your cleric can make an attack action and then can do a spell.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. A lot of the.
But we found that the healing wasn't quite as effective.
Yeah, the healing wasn't.
Or didn't do quite as good of a job.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed is that the range of spells, like throwing them out, has shortened considerably.
Yeah, it's like 30 feet or 60 feet.
A lot of them are 30 to 60 feet where they used to be 120. Or just within visual range, whatever. So I'm not too happy about that because it makes your wizard, your spell person, a lot more vulnerable. Also, if you throw up shield on yourself, it only lasts for a round.
Yeah.
Instead of, it's going to last 10 rounds or 11 or 12 rounds, that kind of thing. It only lasts for a round, so you better throw it back up again. And so you got to be careful how many of those spells you use,
right.
Because, you could use that spell up in place of a spell you may need offensively.
Right. So spells are a little bit different. I played a paladin, and I found that the laying on hands was really tweaked down. I think I had, at 6th level, I could do it twice. Which kind of made it, paladin's not as effective as a combat healer as they used to be.
It's almost one of those things where you wonder why you want to do it.
Yeah.
And
it was a 1d6.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing, I can only do it twice, and I can only do 1d6. It might keep somebody alive, but chances of death are greater.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we talked about that when we were playing the healing aspects of a paladin. And then, of course, there's the shield aspects of a paladin, too. Like a paladin and their shield. What if their shield gets rendered?
Which happened to my paladin.
Exactly. And so it's like the whole thing about D&D was that the paladin's shield was part of them being a paladin. You know,
Yeah.
you protected others with your shield. You know, on your shield you had your heraldry. You know, it was part of your life.
Yeah.
And so they've kind of scrambled egged that a little bit in Pathfinder 2.0 because of that. And I'm not really sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I like the shield combat part, but it makes it tougher as a paladin. I think paladins have really been brought down a notch. I was also playing a rogue in that, and doing all the sneak attack damage. I wasn't doing as much as you normally would have thought I could have done, and sneaking around I found to be a lot trickier.
They've really pared down the amount of damage you can do, your specialty damage, like sneak attack, that sort of thing.
But on the upside is if you have a magic weapons and equipment are totally different. You don't have reeds of protection that we could find, or bracers of armor protection. A magical weapon, if you've got, depending upon your level, so at 6th level we could have a 5th level slot, 2 4th level slot, a 3rd level slot, 2 2nd level slots, and a 1st level slot magic item. Mm-hmm. And a magical +1 weapon was basically a 2nd level slot.
Yeah.
And then to make it where it was enchanted, where it would do extra damage, instead of doing 1d6, it would do 2d6, you had to put another piece of magic onto it, which then made that a 5th level weapon.
Right.
But it kind of helped with doing a little more damage. I wasn't doing a ton of damage, you know, where a lot of fighters may go in and start doing 25, 30 points of damage with their weapon because they're getting a hit and they got their strength and they got their hit and they got their strength and they got their hit, they got their strength. You know, I wasn't doing as much damage. I was still doing enough to beat back the demonic creature that we were fighting.
Yeah, we were fighting kind of a flying demon, which was...
It was an undead, actually.
It was a hard fight because we weren't quite familiar with our characters.
And we had three clerics in the room and then a bunch of undead.
Yeah.
So it was a tough fight, but we didn't have anybody go down.
No, we got through it. And luckily, we were able to heal enough with bursts and things like that.
Yeah. So I think you're kind of hearing here some of the dislikes was kind of the spells and the way they've kind of notched down characters. I'm not complaining so hard about that because I think it takes some of the power gaming out of it. Mm-hmm. Could you still power game this? Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you really dug through these books and knew all the ins and outs, you could game it.
I think it would be harder, and I think maybe power gamers probably shrink away from this kind of a system because it is so limiting in a lot of respects, especially when it comes to the way you can do fumbles. Power gamers live on those crits, and when they get bad rolls and they start tripping over themselves or breaking their weapons or stabbing themselves in the eye or something like that, that really goes against how power gamers like to go.
Right. Now, as far as gold and magic too, at 6th level, we had 400 gold pieces that we could spend, and that was for all of our equipment, armor, weapons, magical items.
Yeah.
So while magic items have decreased in cost, you still don't have all this power.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of gold. Your wands are done differently too.
Wands were one of the things that we didn't like because a wand and magic missile, you could use it one time per round as your action. If you used it a second time, there was a great chance it would break.
Yeah, and you couldn't use it one after another after anher.
Well, if you did it a third time, it was almost guaranteed to break.
Yeah, that was
the thing. And then it was worthless. You didn't have charges, so you didn't have to worry about, well, I only have 10 charges, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
You know, 10 rounds later, it's a worthless item.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that. But if you use it one time, it still doesn't do as much damage. And if you wanted to use it in your second action, now you got a greater chance of it breaking.
Yeah.
And then a third time, it's almost a guaranteed chance of breaking.
Yeah.
Then it's being worthless.
I had a wand of magic missile for my little gnome. But I found that I couldn't use it very often. One, it didn't do a whole lot of damage. Two, you had to be worried about breaking it. Three, when you've got creatures with, a lot of damage reduction, a lot of times it just doesn't do the kind of damage you want. 1d4 plus 1. I mean, they always hit, which is good, but they don't always do the damage. So
Yeah. So that was kind of another dislike was
Yeah.
the way the wands or the magic, some of the magic worked.
Yeah.
Some of the magic is kind of cool. Some of it is not so cool.
Yeah.
Like I said, not having rings of protection, bracers of protection, shields. I couldn't figure out how. I don't think you could put a magical protection on a shield.
Yeah, it used to be you could get shields +1, +2, +3, and they would really be enhanced with your armor class. You might be able to do that, but I don't know how we haven't been able to figure that out
you
yet.
couldn't, which means
Yeah.
it's not designed within the rules to do it.
Yeah.
So overall, there's things I really like. There's things I don't like. The combat was really cool. The skills, the chances of critical success and fumble is really cool. You don't really roll dice at all to create your character because you're assigned all your hit points based upon your level. You're assigned X amount of skills that you can assign wherever you want between the basic skills of strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma.
Yeah.
The core abilities that we've always had. But it's easier to come up with one skill that's at least a +4 because we're making second level characters now for a new game that he's going to run, that our DM's going to run. And I'm going to play a tiefling sorceress, and I'm playing a half-elven ranger. They've kind of stripped out the half-elven parts, and that's part of the heritage things that you can throw that in there, that you have some elven characteristics from somebody in the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, coming up with a second level character has been kind of interesting. And I don't think it's easier to go through without breaking it, but I think Tom still kind of broke some things when he was creating one of his characters.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to wrap this up, and we're going to revisit this at another time when we play a little more.
Right, we've played twice now.
Yeah, this is sort of our initial impressions of how the game system's working. It's accessible, but maybe a little difficult. I definitely don't think it's for beginners.
It's definitely, if you're brand new to RPGs, it may not, unless you've got the right group and the right mindset, it may not be the game for you. If you've played 5e, I would definitely jump over to 2nd edition.
Yeah.
I would absolutely, definitely jump over to 2nd edition. And I know talking with Josh, Josh has had his, his likes and dislikes, and they're kind of the same as ours, and we're still kind of out on some of this. But overall, it's a good system. I'm glad we're playing it. I'm glad I'm getting a chance to play it. Would I run it as a DM? Yeah, absolutely. I've been teaching our DM a lot of how it works because of what I've read, and I don't have this memory retention for everything, but there's things that I picked up on, like the critical success and failure, the 3 actions, things like that I really picked up on and understand and gain. So I was teaching our DM kind of how it went, plus all my experience with Pathfinder 1st edition. So we're going to end this episode of Wizard of the Tower.
Roleplay.
And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell because that gives you a notification. Apologies if we haven't posted anything for a little bit. It's because we've kind of been busy.
Yep.
And we've got some other things coming up that kind of may prevent us from dumping some stuff out. But anyway, follow us on Discord. Email us if there's an episode you want to see us do. And please leave a comment because we will always reply to your comment. So anyway, may all your adventures be epic.
And keep on rolling.
Thanks, folks.